So last week, someone sent me a message after we'd finished that really intrigued me and seemed to speak to something that's going on. Is everything okay? Everyone hears me okay? Um, I'll take silence as yes. Uh, they wrote something on this order. When the pandemic first started, my friends and I were very disciplined. And we did this pretty easily because we thought that it was only going to be a couple months and then it would be over and we'd get back to normal. And now it seems to be stretching on interminably. And people are starting to lose their discipline and get careless and get desperate. And this person was worried and looking for some kind of guidance and thought about what to do. So I thought about two friends of mine who've just gotten out of prison. One's just gotten out of prison after 28 years, and the other got out about 5 years ago after 28 years, most of it on death row. And they both emerged, especially my first friend, emerged probably better than when he went in. He got a high school diploma, he got a bachelor's, he got a master's, he became a radiologist, he became a psychologist in prison. And now he's a drug and alcohol counselor for the county of Sonoma. Anyway, it was so inconceivable to me to spend 28 years in a 6 by 9 foot space that I asked him about it. And both friends came up with some variant of the same thing, which was that the way they did their time was to actually be there. And they resisted all the distractions of imagining they could be someplace else or what they were missing or what they'd rather be doing. Of course, many thought over the path and the consequences that got them there. But they set their sights in the prison. They worked in the prison. They developed hobbies. One friend of mine made very intricate copies of Persian rugs with beads. Take a picture of a museum quality rug and put out something that was about this big by this big, and he'd work on it for weeks at a time, getting it right. So I began thinking about the relevance of that practice to the current pandemic, and was thinking that Zen is actually a very good practice for dealing with the pandemic, which is getting worse. It's getting ghastly. And we could take, some smugness in saying, we told you so, we told you it was coming. These southern governors who were politicizing it and opening things up too quickly, and even the governor of California, who did everything perfectly, was under enormous pressure to open up, to get the economy going. And they did, and they opened it too quickly. And we have hard comparisons. We know that there are twice as many people in Germany, for instance, as there are in Arizona. And Germany has about 250 cases a day compared to Arizona's 9,000 today. And Germany, most of Europe, Taiwan, Singapore, China, they were all very disciplined about it. They're not all autocracies. Many are democracies, but perhaps more cohesive democracies, perhaps less distracted by ideologies is probably the best word for it. Animosities. And they got their act together and they got the virus under control, and then they can open up their economies. And we are in a draconian situation. I mean, it's Dantean. These are like different realms of hell. You watch the news and you see the nurses and the doctors just stretched completely thin It's hard not to let anxiety penetrate your own life. It's hard not to wonder, golly, will America ever be the same again? Will my kids have a life even approaching mine? Will my granddaughter or grandson? The only way I know to deal with thoughts like this is in the context of meditation, which is that we watch them arise out of emptiness, out of nowhere. We have the courage to sit with them and explore them and own the feelings that derive from them. And then we watch them disappear. And when they disappear, we're back in big mind. We're back in the realm of limitless possibilities, the I don't know place. The I don't know. And I don't know is really useful because the mind itself has certain predictive functions. So I think I talked about this once before. We have this mechanism called the default mode network. And the default mode network kind of keeps us in conventional consciousness. It stops us from being high all the time, stops us from being distracted watching a butterfly when a tiger might be behind us. And that default mode network has been created by evolution to make us more efficient. So in Buddhist practice, we understand that every single individual is an unrepeatable incident. Every flower is an unrepeatable incident. And it's hard to keep yourself in a place where you will see each flower as an unrepeatable incident. Oh, it's a rose. Been there, know that. Oh, it's a yuppie. Been there, know that. Oh, it's a banker. Been there, know that. When in fact we don't. We actually don't. We don't even know that the person we were angry at 10 minutes later is a different person. Which is actually a very liberating state because it means we can come back, like we come back to our breath in Zazen. We can come back to the present moment, the moment where our life actually is. Everything but this moment is a memory or an anticipation. It can be a positive anticipation, it can be negative, it can be a good memory, it can be a bad memory, it can be a fantasy. But it's not this moment. And I don't know another way to get through this except by accepting that this is our life. At Zen Center, on the night of the full moon, there's a ceremony on the roof at San Francisco Zen Center. And one of the chants that's stated goes, "All my ancient twisted karma, born of body, speech, and mind, from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, I now fully avow. I own it. All my ancient twisted karma." So if we look at this condition of the pandemic as a braid, yes, on one level it's a virus that's seeking opportunity to inhabit human bodies and to replicate itself. And that's just a force of nature. That's like a hurricane or a volcano or this morning I just read about rabbit fever, a new pandemic that's killing rabbits, 100% lethal. Those things are just facts. But what makes them doubly terrible is coulda, woulda, shoulda. God, if we had a different president, if we had leadership, if we followed science, if people were educated, if people were disciplined. And all of those aspects that we're resisting, accepting, we don't have to like them, but we accept them as facts. They just go back and back and back and back through time. Decisions made to defund public schools, decisions made to rip the budgets from public schools and give it to charter schools, to be able to pull the brightest kids from public school to charter schools, which are investment opportunities. They may also be better schools, but there's no evidence that they produce better students on the whole. So then there's a whole bunch of people who are left behind, who are in substandard schools, substandard education. And these people are a force that keeps going as part of the braid. You have political beliefs. You have conspiracy theories. If you voted for Trump and you believe him, and you believe that the President of the United States must be the smartest guy in the race, and your power and your prestige depends on him, if he says no masks, if he says the pandemic is bullshit, okay, a whole bunch of governors get in line. They don't listen to the doctors. They don't listen to science. They're basically in a mental, political state. And they're acting out a vision that's not in this present moment. It's an idea. If I go against him, my career will suffer. He'll Twitter against me. I might lose the next election. That's not this present moment. And so it's very painful for people who are trying to actually be present and see reality and all its dimensionality, to see the amount of suffering and the amount of death that is being generated by greed for political power, greed for fame, greed for wealth, anger, hatred, the division, aversion is a more neutral way to say it. The belief that all the evil is out there in other people. I don't share it. Me and mine are the good guys. It's a classic delusion. And then delusion itself, that certain mental states and ideas and belief systems are as real and tangible as we believe our ego is, our self is. And Buddhists have sort of an example advantage. Because when you meditate and your sense of self begins to get a little fluid and things start to get a little woo-woo, space opens up in everything. And you can begin to look at everything more spaciously. And you can begin to look at it from other sides. My wife once, she was dyslexic, and I went to a dyslexic clinic with her. And the teacher there said, dyslexia is the executive's disease, the artist's disease. And she said, you and I, when we pick up something, we look at it like this, it's a pen, and we might look at it like this. But a dyslexic will look at it like this, like that, like that, like that, like that. Can make very confusing, but it also generates a lot of creative energy and new combinations. And I have no idea why I mentioned that. It must have been related to something I was thinking. Anyway, so here we are. This is our life. This pandemic. And it could actually go on for years. And so what would that mean? First of all, let's accept that living itself is the prize. That's the prize. Not even what we do with it, just living itself. I saw a wonderful film on HBO the other night. It's called If You're Not in the Obit, Eat Breakfast. And it was Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks doing a documentary about people all over 90 and some over 100 that are living life completely full, enjoying themselves, running marathons, dressing up, doing every conceivable thing, singing, dancing. But they all said the same thing. They all said, life itself is the prize. You wake up and you're alive. That's the prize. And when we forget that, or when we demote that in importance and begin to elevate other things like being all I can be, being a Democrat, being a Republican, being gay, being liberal, changing my gender. All those things are ancillary. It's not that they're not important, but when they begin to be elevated to supersede the actual victory of your next breath, your next heartbeat, which was never guaranteed, then we're in trouble. So I feel like I'm in a privileged state. I am, compared to a lot of people. I live on a little tiny farm, dead-end roads, no traffic, and I love being home. I've just finished 2 books. I write, I practice the guitar, I walk my dogs, I take care of my gardens. I try to go out as little as I possibly can, and try to arrange a little bit of social life with people that are really rigorous. So there's a couple of people I eat lunch with every Sunday. They come over. We stay far apart, but we talk, we laugh, we chat, and we stay safe. So it's hard to say that it's onerous for me to do this, to live like this. I'm not living in Manhattan. I'm not living in a tenement. I'm not one of those people that has to go out to work. We've just promoted all the poor people by calling them essential workers, people who don't have the elastic or the money or the income to stay in seclusion. They have to go out. So I get to sit here on a farm because there are many people risking their lives for me. And I try to acknowledge that in some way. Tried to pay my housekeeper, for instance, when she didn't show up, pay my gardener when he didn't show up. I hire somebody to go to the grocery store who's making a living by doing that for people. By the way, if you don't know about TaskRabbit, it's an app where you can get people to go and do chores, fix things, come help you, and you don't have to take the risks. So what gratitude I have for those people. And so what do I try to do with this privilege? Well, one of the things that I try to do is sit zazen and share what comes up with other people and live and work with a body of people who are interested in wisdom and kindness. So I think the first order that we have to face is that this is going to go on for a long time, until at least 50% of the population has been infected. Because as long as the transmission of the virus is more than 1, any fraction over 1, it's growing, it's spreading. So then the question is, how are we going to do that with grace and without feeling like we're losing out? We are losing. We are losing easy interchange with one another, the fun of going to restaurants, the fun of going to theater, the fun of going to movies. But we're all alive. And we have that. And we know that the situation will change. So how do we live our lives every day in a way that will keep us supple, strong, happy, healthy, fulfilling our needs as best we can, taking care of our kids, taking care of our elders, without going nuts? It's to stay in this moment. It's to acknowledge that this moment is your life, and that this moment was delivered by an incredibly complex braid of karma. I mean, you don't know where to start. You can't even start with the founding fathers. You know, you have to go even beyond the people that Europe didn't work for that came to America. Humans have been humans for 250,000 years. And humans bring into the world or act out through their existence until they crack it greed, I want, attraction, hatred, aversion, I don't like, this is not me, and delusion, the belief in non-substantial things as real, the domino theory. Killed 3 million people in Asia. And then somebody said, oh, it didn't work. And all of Southeast Asia did not become communist. Oh. Mao Zedong's great leap forward. 20 million people starved to death. Oops. But this was their fate. And they were in that fate because of a complex web of historical events over which they had very little control. And so were we. Who would have thought that America could come apart at the seams as rapidly and radically as it has? I didn't. I mean, I wasn't always happy with my government, but I didn't think I would actually see a push, an overt push, to build an autocracy on this continent, with one man giving away favors and pointing blame and punishing malefactors. But this is our fate. And we can take this fate back and we can find different pieces of it. The Democratic Party abandonment of rural people and blue-collar people, Reagan's attack on unions, which the Congress went along with, weakening the only protection that workers had against, malign employers. You can go back and back and back and back. But here we are. And the only sound question is, what are we going to do? How are we going to keep our spirits up? Someone asked the Dalai Lama once, are you angry at the Chinese? And his reply was really instructive. This is what makes him the Dalai Lama and not Peter Coyote. He said, the Chinese have taken everything from me. And when he says everything, he means that he gets up at 3 a.m. and he meditates for 3 hours before he starts meeting people. And the people he meets all day long are people who've been tortured in prison by the Chinese, people whose relatives have been killed, people who've fled their native home to be under his aegis. Day in and day out, that's what he hears. So he says, the Chinese have taken everything from me. I'm not going to let them take my state of mind. And that's why he's a world-revered teacher. I'm not going to let them take my state of mind. I have a friend who calls me up every week and he's furious at Donald Trump. He watches the news, he fulminates, he screams, and he ends every conversation the same way. We got to stop this bullshit. All right, I'll talk to you later. Not a happy camper. So there's nothing that we can't do practicing calmness, practicing composure, practicing kindness, practicing accepting that the life we're living, the life we are a part of, is bigger than we are. It didn't get this way because we used tungsten light bulbs. There were a whole bunch of forces that worked that made it this. So we have to pick and choose our way through it. And now our indulgence as Americans is being undercut. We inhabited a virtually empty, wealthy country. People think there were maybe 3 million native people here on this entire continent. And one of the reasons we've been so wealthy was the country hadn't been exploited. Vast forest, vast herds of game, vast prairies, vast space. And we used it up as quickly as we could. We covered the continent in about a century. And now we're kind of reaching limits. And we're impacted by one another. And we're impacted by one another's decisions. So I saw a video yesterday of some guy melting down in a Target store because someone reminded him that it was the policy of the store to wear masks. And this guy went berserk. He went postal, threatening this person, screaming things. There was another woman who came into a fast food place without a mask, and somebody asked her to put a mask on. She went postal, screaming at people, calling them Democrats. This is the worst thing she could think of to call them. There's a lot of anger out there, a lot of fear, and they're all going to blow through us. And what we can do is our house cleaning. We can sit, we can let them rise, we can feel them, we can absorb them without letting them out past our teeth. We can scrub our little corners of our psyches, and we can realize we're just like those people, but we're lucky we have a practice. We have something we can do to help ourselves. But we ought to do it. And the first thing we ought to do is meditate. Because nothing will take you down to ground zero like meditating. The Dalai Lama's blunt about it. He says you cannot be enlightened unless you meditate. I believe him. So I'm just looking to see what people are saying, if there's questions. Somebody said, have breakfast. Anyway, I don't know if I'll be able to take questions, but if you have any questions about what I've been talking about, I'd like to be more helpful. But this is the subject I know. This is what I teach. And so it may be more helpful to you to take a Jumba class. But you can't do it right now, except in front of your television. So I appreciate that you're coming and listening to this musings about we're all in it together. And so what do we do about the people that don't know that? What do we do about the people who are not wearing masks, who are advertising that they don't give a crap about you? They're much more concerned with their comfort. They're much more concerned with proving it's a hoax, that Donald Trump is, if this was Ebola, we would not be accepting it. Oh, sorry, Jonelle Romero, my native friend, reminds me there was 120 million native people here. Just a minute, let me get her back here. 120 million native people here. They're still there. Join us today at 5 for the American Holocaust, a limited film and conversation original series from the native perspective. Goes live today, Monday. Let me see where. Facebook. You can find it on Facebook. Anyway, little knowledge is a dangerous thing. She's right, I'm wrong. But those 120 million people did not waste resources. They didn't turn the forests into toilet paper. They didn't cut down the mountains for coal. So maybe their imprint was like less than 3 million Americans. I'm sorry, Janelle, but thanks for telling me that. Okay, let me see if anyone else has said anything that should be shared. Let me just look. Oh, Catherine Cleese tells us that the Dalai Lama speaks often on Facebook. I didn't know that. I think I told you also that on my website, petercoyote.com, if you click on Buddhism, there's a list of books there that I felt really helpful by men and women from different sects of Buddhism. I'm not pushing one or the other. I'm just looking, pardon me while I do this. Jim Pascal says, meditation is the channel. Tune in. Somebody's trying to sit zazen several times a day. My friend Katie Heflin's asking me if I know about Bill Gates. I know all I want to know about Bill Gates. So here's a good thought. Any thought on how to be more connected as we have to shelter in the coming places for months? This is an implication that I should have drawn out more fully, but this could take a lot of creativity. For instance, I'm going to be holding certain Zen meetings by Zoom. I meet with my teachers and peers every couple of weeks on Zoom. There are a bunch of students that would like to talk to me, or at least peers, not students. They're not my students. They would like to talk and explore this kind of secular Buddhism, meditation Buddhism that I practice. And I think there are lots to be invented yet. I've seen choral groups, I've seen symphony orchestras working on Zoom. Zoom is pretty great. You can get it free and you get up to 40 minutes. It's not very expensive to buy and you get up to 24 hours of something. So this would be worth some thought and some exploration, something to think about while we're sitting zazen. What does Gates' comment mean? Vaccine related? I don't know. But if it is, I don't want to talk about vaccinations and I don't want to talk about Bill Gates. Here's something. Daphne Martin says, please be active as one can be in whatever area of social support we can give. We need to help all who can. We can do it in place. Be creative. You know, when people come to me and they're troubled and they have difficulty, I always tell them the same thing. Help somebody else. Find somebody else to help, and your problems will diminish. Stop thinking about yourself. Think about somebody else. I have a friend who routinely goes into grocery stores and tips the people $50. He's a rich guy, but he just tips the cashiers $50. Says thank you. They're showing up every day. There are many, many ways we can help. Someone says, how much meditation time do you recommend each day? Well, I think a minimum is 25 minutes. If you can do it twice a day, or if you can do a 40-minute period once a day, that's great. But I think the real benefits come when you can find a time to do multiple periods, like take a Sunday and sit 6 periods. Do a very slow walk in between them, maybe stretch your legs. After every 3 periods, have maybe a cup of tea or something. Then do another 3 with a 5-minute break to stretch. Or if you're near, I don't know if people will be sitting sesshin right now, but there's nothing like a 1-day sesshin or a 7-day sesshin to really ground you and push you. And then the daily meditation locks in what you've learned and explored. So I would say if you can meditate 20 to 25 minutes twice a day, within a month, you'll start to feel a kind of inner spaciousness opening up. I've got time for a few more questions. You can't join these Zoom meetings. These first Zoom meetings that I'm doing are from seasoned practitioners. Many of them are studying at other Zen centers and they've had some difficulty there or things about it that they don't like, and they'd like to hear what I have to say about the way that I practice. So these are exploratory meetings only, and they're kind of graduate school level. Let's see. Catherine Cleese says, I was taught you can't find happiness in you. You find it in helping your neighbors, especially the grouchy ones. Well, that would include me. If you've ever watched me when my computer goes on the fritz, I had to send my Apple back for the second time yesterday. So I'm using a strange computer and nothing is simple and intuitive. And oh boy, I turn into a big baby. It's really funny. Um, let's see. Uh-huh. Someone is asking if there's any Zen center online that's doing online distance sessions. I don't know, but I think that you could probably write to the San Francisco Zen Center and they might know. And they are certainly doing Dharma talks online. Usually every Sunday there's a rotating procession of senior teachers, many of them good friends that I respect, who are doing Dharma talks. So if you want to hear other points of view and find out whether or not I'm full of crap, listen to some other teachers and see what they have to say. Uh, I'm not taking students formally right now, and I'll tell you why. Um, so I talk to people the way that I'm talking to you now is not as your teacher. I'm talking as a Dharma brother. I'm talking as someone who is interested in the Dharma. I'm on the horizontal with you. I've seen a lot of Zen centers get in trouble with hierarchies. There's the Zen master, he must be the enlightened guy or gal, and whatever they do must be okay. And I'm still tangled up all the barbed wire, so I better watch this. And I lived in a Zen center where this was the case, where students were working for $200 a month, and the Zen master was driving a $70,000 BMW and spending a student's monthly salary on the right lamp for his daughter's bedroom. There are Zen masters that have been exiled from Japan as thieves, sent here. There have been alcoholic Zen masters, sexually inappropriate Zen masters. A Zen guy who's not paying attention is just like anyone else. But our predilection for thinking we don't know and someone else does very often has us hang up our common sense and our intuitions, you know. And in fairness, there were cultural differences. If women wanted to sleep with a Zen master who was Asian, he's assuming that she was a responsible adult and she knew what she was doing. He didn't see anything wrong with it, but he didn't fully understand American culture. So I'd like to sidestep all that. And for the time being, anyway, I don't have any formal students, and I'm just a Dharma brother, someone who's walking the same path and on the same level as you. And maybe I have more experience meditating or something like that. But basically, we're all bozos on the bus, as my friend Dick Grace says.